Aggression in athletics is a norm of our society, but should it be? In a letter written by Theodore Roosevelt to his son on the subject of participating in the high school football team, Roosevelt concludes that high-contact sports are a mighty good servant, but like so many other good servants, a mighty bad master. Roosevelt continues by alluding to the ancient Romans' way of distracting the Greeks through athletic participation. Essentially, if one is completely engrossed in athletics, then one has no other energy to apply to another focus, thus relieving the Greeks of the threat of the Romans both militarily and politically. The all-consuming nature of athletics does not pose a problem until athletes or former athletes are required to assimilate into a commonly anti-aggression society on a daily basis. According to Rachel Rentner, health scientist and journalist, athletes make up 3% of college campuses, yet account for 19% of all campus violence. Athletes make up such a small proportion of campuses, yet account for almost a quarter of all campus violence, including rape, attempted rape, and many cases of sexual violence. This shows a fundamental issue in the overaggression in athletics because the only correlation between the perpetrators of 19% of college campus violence is their participation in high-level athletics. This issue arouses the necessity of the question, what are the solutions for the major causes of overaggression in athletics? To understand the solutions, we must first look at the nature of the problem. The major causes are the culture created by the sports and the nature of spectator admiration. According to Fazil Malembo Ngaka, South African politician and United Nations official, many girls are not enticed to participate in athletics because of the gender-based violence perpetrated by overaggression. Many coaches become complicit or directly involved in abuse scandals because they were never able to assimilate following the ending of their careers. Ngaka fears the boys will be boys culture, which normalizes abuse, as seen in the many cases of the USA gymnastics team. According to Eric Lacey and Christopher Haxel, John Goddard, former USA gymnastics coach convicted of sexual assault, was a former gymnast at Central Michigan University where his career ended abruptly. Shortly after, he began coaching where he used his position of power to assault some of the 260 women who spoke out against his athletic trainer, Larry Nassar. John Goddard used his position of power to subjugate women for years because he was never able to assimilate following the abrupt ending of his career. Along with the created culture of sports, the spectator admiration is a major problem that causes overaggression in athletics. According to the Mayo Clinic staff, a group of world-renowned medical professionals, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a mental disorder in which an individual experiences a highly inflated view of themselves, including an excessive need for admiration and an excessive need for immediate fulfillment of desires. According to a social commentary written by Eugene Goodhart, a Guggenheim Fellow in Humanities, divinity is in the athlete and the spectator is the observant laity at the shrine. Spectators give athletes so much admiration on a daily basis that once you've received something over and over again, you begin to expect it. It's a sociological principle. When you receive something over and over again, it's something that you expect on a daily basis. So when their careers start slowing down or they don't get the same spectator admiration or even get the opposite of spectator admiration or spectator hate, they begin to feel like they need to fix it in some other aspect of their life, usually in their personal life. According to a study conducted by Ziegler Hill, the associate editor of the Journal of Personality Assessment at Oakland University, in a group of 500 individuals who they studied, 34% of these individuals admitted to sexually coercive behavior or sexually violent behavior, and out of these individuals, every member of that 34% scored high on either the normal narcissism test or pathological narcissism test. And it is important to note that even normal narcissism is considered a mental disorder by almost every major emotional standard. So individuals who had some form of narcissism, whether it be normal to pathological, are going to be more likely to engage in sexually violent behavior, all from just sexually coercive behavior all the way up to rape. So if athletes are more prone to NPD because of the constant spectator admiration, they're also more prone to sexually violent behavior because this excessive admiration is leading to narcissistic personality disorder, which leads to sexually violent behavior. Now that we have an understanding of the major causes of the problems, we can go into the solutions. The first solution I propose today is introducing rules of etiquette to many sports. While most sports do have rules of etiquette, many of them are not followed, and many of them are not enforced, especially by fans or by coaches or even teammates. So certain sports, such as high-contact sports, football and hockey, they have rules of etiquette that are enforced by officials, but not as enforced by teammates or coaches or other fans or spectators. And so targeting your opponent or encouraging a late hit in football is something that is happening very regularly, and it kind of takes out the civility and the community of the sport itself. But other sports such as golf, tennis, or even polo in other countries have rules of etiquette that encourage civility, such as not targeting your opponent if you have an ability not to target them, or encouraging your teammate if you know they hit a good shot, or if you know that they did something that was just really good. If you're acknowledging these things, you're kind of introducing this spirit of civility and community to the sport. So introducing these rules of etiquette to high contact sports that don't have them can help promote civility and community in young athletes and help prevent any overaggression that comes out of this. While this was a pretty good solution, it is not an economically feasible solution because certain organizations would have to agree and mostly lose a lot of support for taking out what could be considered the fun of these sports. A more economically feasible solution is targeting and diagnosing NPD at an early age. If we know that athletes are more prone to NPD, then why not start diagnosing it and really introducing the idea in school systems? So if you're introducing the children to a young age what can happen if they don't really humble themselves in sports or really take a focus on making sure that their athletics does not get involved in their personal life or their athletics does not take over their life, then NPD can be prevented in such a young age as high school athletes who are starting to go through this transformation of narcissistic personality disorder. So it's really important that we start targeting NPD at a young age. However, there are still some limitations. While this is a more economically feasible solution, many of these subjects are considered touchy subjects for PTA or school boards or even government legislation because they are subjects that we don't want to introduce our children to. We want to believe that they aren't going to be sexually violent when they're older. But if we just believe that they won't, it's not going to change that they still might. So it's important that we start diagnosing and treating NPD at a young age and really focus on trying to help individuals from getting overly aggressive in athletics. Thank you.
So my first question for you is, how did you approach and synthesize the differing perspectives in order to reach a conclusion?
So I had to look a lot at so many people almost admire what many coaches and to make sports such a universal concept, to make it so profitable in American society especially. So I had to look through all these sources that encourage such displays of over-aggression because that's what sells to fans. It's what merchandises companies. So I had to look past economic implications mostly and focus on real social problems that are caused.
What additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
An additional question that emerged from my research was how difficult it is to really get innovative ideas into government legislation for school systems. It's so difficult to change government legislation in schools because there's such, especially public schools, because there's such a set curriculum that's supposed to be standardized everywhere across the country, and it's extremely difficult to change that legislation because it's supposed to be standardized to the best possible way, but the government legislation is lacking in so many areas that it needs to be a little bit more easy to open up and get new ideas into government legislation, especially in school systems.